can't really
Mhm.
talk about intimacy without bringing up conflict, because the deeper you go inside of somebody, the innermost layers
Mhm.
in intimacy, it is going to bring up, and I say conflict, not of like throwing plates and you're upset at each other and you're yelling, but just like a conflict of, I don't like that. I really, or
Mhm.
that kind of place in you where you might have not been able to voice that and you're internally conflicted. So how can we hold the conflict, or how can we hold the, whether it's a power differential or whether it's, you know, being conflicted about somebody's needs or your own needs, how can we hold that? And how can we still hold each other and high
Yeah.
five at the end?
Welcome to The Functional Edge. I'm Dr. Julia Ward, and this is where science meets real-world strategies for living healthier, sharper, and stronger. From uncovering hidden environmental toxins to unlocking peak performance and mental clarity, we cover it all. Ready to take control of your health and thrive? Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Functional Edge podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Julia Ward, medical director and founder of Balanced Body Functional Medicine. Today, we're honored to welcome back Dr. Maria DeFranco to our show. In this episode, Dr. Maria and I are going to have a very open discussion about sex and pelvic floor anatomy, along with like feelings of shame and intimacy. So this is going to be a little bit different from our usual podcast because it's going to be more of a discussion. So please stay tuned for an engaging conversation that promises to empower and inspire your path to wellness. Welcome back, Dr. Maria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julia. I really appreciate that.
And just to give our listeners a little background about yourself, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So first, I'll just start with a disclaimer, because you did mention we're going to be talking about sex, and I am
Yes.
not a sex therapist, or like it's not really an expertise of mine. However, I do specialize in the pelvic bowl and embodiment practices, as well as musculoskeletal health. So it is a natural topic, for us to discuss and explore. It does, a lot of questions can come up in the treatment room that are addressed through the holistic viewpoint that I carry. So
Mhm.
I'm a holistic chiropractor with about 20 years of experience with body work, and I address the person's body, mind, and soul with all different kinds of modalities, really, depending on what they're presenting.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah.
great. That's awesome. And I'd like to also say I am not a sex therapist or a sex expert in any way, but it comes up because I do treat the body from a functional point of view. I'm looking at hormones, I'm looking at nutrients, like there's a variety of different things that kind of play into that. So I think we both kind of come across this in various different forms. So,
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a big part of health, right? Sexual
yes.
health is such a big part of health and well-being. And I think what I discovered in our discussion, which inspired us to really kind of go out
Yes.
there with it, was how much we're both passionate about sex, and we're not afraid to really talk about it and have those, those discussions that a lot of times we don't have, even with like our closest girlfriends, So
Right.
I think both being practitioners and having a background in the body and wellness, it's just a great opportunity for us to, you know, open up the discussion and see what comes through.
Yes, yes. And I think we all bring our own kind of emotional baggage towards our attitudes towards sex and how we were brought up. And so, that just reflects on how we then deal with different situations or even just talking about it. So
Yeah.
I realized how little my family talked about sex growing up. Like that just was not a topic for conversation. And I think early on my parents they did try to teach us when we were young kids, I mean like toddlers, about the names of anatomical parts and things like that. But after that, they kind of just dropped it. Life got in the way. There was never really, there was just not much talk. And so when I read books now, like, I'll put a reference. There's a really great book that a friend of mine has written. It's called No Shame: Real Talk with Your Kids About Sex, Self-Confidence, and Healthy Relationships. It's by Dr. Leah Liss. That's a fantastic book about like how to talk to your kids about sex, not just to but to protect them. Because once you know all this information, you're better able to kind of navigate all the pitfalls that go along with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even in sex ed, in high school, like there isn't really much that we're necessarily learning and it's not very empowering, not
No. Yeah.
inherently. So I love the title of that book because
Yeah.
so much of I think what drives the lack of conversation is shame.
Yes.
And often we're kind of implicitly taught that we don't have a pelvis, that we're kind of cut off from here down. And
Yeah.
even being able to name the body parts or have discussions about what they do, the function of them, whether it's, not just sexually, but also, urogenital or, like reproductive in terms of menstruation. Like that is like there's so much richness in what this area of the body does for us that talking about it without shame. And I think that's kind of why we were both like, we should do a podcast because I don't think we have a whole lot of shame. When you and I are talking, it's like, I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. And it's
Yeah.
a really rich conversation
Yeah.
about, your experiences and mine. So I'm just really appreciative that you're open to
Yeah.
take this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, one of the phrases that you use is authentic intimacy. So, what does that mean to you, and how is it different from just like performing sex?
Yeah. For me, authentic intimacy, maybe just breaking down those words, authentic meaning real,
Hmm.
like the essential essence of us. And intimacy actually comes from the Latin word intimus, which means the innermost or the most inward part. So I think of that as like the deepest part, like
Hmm.
who we are without the mask, who
Yeah.
we are without the performance or the pretending, which a lot of
Yeah.
us are taught to do. So authentic intimacy is the deepest part, showing up as me, as the deepest part of myself, and also simultaneously the most real. And you doing the same. I love how people break down that word. Have you heard intimacy, right? Like into me, you see.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's awesome.
I'm seeing through the masks that, we were, or the conditioning. We could also use the word conditioning, I
Hmm.
have to be a certain way,
Yeah.
have to look a certain way, have to talk a
Right.
certain way. It's kind of, it cuts through all of that and goes to
Yeah.
the deeper parts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us do carry some hidden agendas when we are having sex, whether that's pleasing, performing, or just chasing that orgasm. These can kind of disconnect us from our partners. Can you speak a little more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think because for me, it inherently disconnects me from myself. And if I'm
Hmm.
not connected to myself, then I can't be connected to my partner. Not really. Right,
Yeah.
because then who is my partner connecting with?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think when we carry those hidden agendas, and I mean, we all do, myself included, it's like I catch myself doing what I think is expected, operative word think. So I'm
Yeah.
in my head thinking
Yeah.
a certain way of how this is supposed to go,
Yeah.
as opposed to doing what feels good or feeling what I'm experiencing. Instead, I'm like thinking about it. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that that's the difference too between even in the treatment room facilitating a body work session when you're getting a massage or, chiropractic, if you can really feel the pressure, the release, it's less about like I'm being she's trying to fix a problem. It's more like she's connecting me with myself,
Mhm.
And so I think intimacy and sexual intimacy is very similar. The more you're in your body feeling as opposed to thinking, the less that performance comes through.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your experience? I mean, does that make sense? Do you feel
Yeah. Yeah,
similar
absolutely.
or
When
like,
you have it seems like when you have an agenda, it sort of blocks your ability to really connect with yourself and with your partner because your mind is on, I have to get to this point. I have to accomplish this thing
yeah,
instead of just letting things sort of blossom naturally.
totally.
Uh,
You might miss the nuance. If I'm like going to the next thing, I'm not fully in receivership or like receiver mode. If I can't
right.
receive, then how can I experience sensation, whether it's through my eyes, taste, smell, touch?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think performance implies like an external motivation of some kind. And I feel like,
Yeah.
when you're intimate with somebody, you're fully immersed in your experience, not like reading off of a script,
Right.
you know? You
Exactly.
are the script. You are the blank. It's like, being,
Yeah.
uh,
So if somebody notices that they are maybe caught up in that performing kind of mode, what would be like a gentle first step to kind of bring them back to more presence?
Yeah, I think the gentle first step for me would be, what am I feeling right now? Just asking myself that question. And I don't mean emotion, like, am I feeling safe? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling passionate? That can also kind of get us in our head. But like, what am I feeling with my fingertips? Okay, am I
Yeah.
feeling the softness of my lover's skin? Oh, I'm feeling the softness of my lover's skin. Or going even deeper into the other senses. What am I smelling right now? Oh, I'm smelling my own perfume. I'm having a sensation, having experience. What am I seeing? That
Yeah.
whenever like the five doorways to being embodied are our five senses. So I think that's a way of like anchoring in the body really quickly.
Oh,
And that
that's
brings you
great.
back to your experience as opposed to just like thinking and being the observer of it. That's my sensation. I mean, when do you feel, is that okay if I ask? When do you feel the most embodied, where you lose track of the agenda? Like, have there been ways that you've gotten to that point where,
It's definitely, you want to be just sort of, okay, this is my time to focus on my partner. This
yeah,
is not, I'm not trying to think about what's going to happen next or what's happened in the past. It's just, this is our time.
yeah, really
That's
anchoring to the present moment with your partner itself?
right. Right. Yeah. And I also find it helps to set an intention before the session begins.
I love
Um,
that.
like this is my goal here is to bring you as much love and pleasure as possible.
Wow.
And sometimes just setting that little intention can make a huge difference.
Wow, what a beautiful intention. I don't think I've ever explored like voicing
Mhm.
tension like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
felt my whole body soften and like tear up a little bit when you said that. Like, my whole goal is here is your body. What did you say? Pleasure?
Pleasure, the most love and pleasure, attention that I can give. And, yeah, and it hasn't always been like this, I'm totally guilty of just, doing the kind of I've heard it called, like, sort of popcorn sex before, where you just kind of, like, you're going through the motions, but your mind is elsewhere. And maybe
Yeah.
you're still stressed, or maybe you're thinking about something else, and then it's just not fulfilling for either person.
Right. Right. So maybe setting the intention, may this be fulfilling for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Love
Absolutely.
that. Beautiful.
Yeah, and again, just going back to, Dr. Leah's book, I realized how much shame there was growing up about sex because we didn't talk about it, because it was just sort of this implied thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how, like, inherited sexual shame can show up in the body? Like, posture, breath, tone of voice?
Sure. Shame implies that there's something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so when there's something wrong, then things tend to go away or numb out or hide
Mm,
or kind of collapse.
mm,
So I often see it as a disconnect. It shows up as like just disconnection in the anatomy and the body, like almost like a vacancy, a void of aliveness. Yeah.
mm,
One thing when I'm working on the pelvis in the pelvic bowl, I often ask like, who lives here?
mm.
Well, if there was an intelligence that lives in your pelvic bowl, how would they show up? And then it's almost like the anatomy italicizes, like, it's like, oh, wait, somebody's listening to me, And so then things start to kind of unfurl a little bit. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I would say a general like disconnect. Shame disconnects us
yeah.
immediately from who we truly are,
Mhm.
each other. So, yeah, and then posture wise, it like that collapse, you could kind of see the head carried forward or kind of tucking the tail, really,
Yeah.
like a tucked tail pelvis, where we kind of lack that lordotic curve in the low back,
Mhm.
definitely can be a sign of
Yeah.
shame, deeply inherited shame in the body. And also, I see it so many times because I'm fortunate to treat families. So treat them,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes multi generations, right?
Oh,
And the kids of the parents that I treat oftentimes will come in with the same, very similar posture, and they'll walk,
interesting.
very similar to how their parents walk. And then, sure enough, I'll, coach the parents on proper body mechanics, and they start,
Yeah.
and we don't really even have to have a discussion with the kids because the kids are just constantly watching their parents
Yeah.
implicitly in how they move. And so, sure, I believe that, if my mom, is kind of disembodied in her pelvis, walks
Uh-huh.
with the tucked tail, I might have learned to do the same thing, just from mirroring and watching and kind of modeling after our
Wow.
our
Yeah.
caregivers, right? So it's really interesting what the body language conveys. What is it? 85% of communication is nonverbal.
Mhm.
So we're constantly looking and seeing how people, are moving. And I think sometimes you can override your anatomy by, okay, what would it be like to walk around without a tuck tail?
Uh-huh.
And then how does that inform my shame based abuse or my shame based conditioning? It's almost like, you start skipping and you have a bad day. Your friend's like, just skip with me. And you're like, no, I don't want to skip. That's stupid. And then she's like, "Ah," and like she makes you do it. And before you know it, your anatomy is making
Yeah.
you laugh and
Okay.
the movement. So I do think it can be overrode by, uh, you know, going into those places and changing the body posture can
Yeah.
all
Do you
disrupt
see
that.
that? Like, do you have patients that have had a lot of shame, not necessarily sexual shame, but just shame in general, and you find that there's some issues with muscles on the inside of the pelvic wall? Maybe they're just not freed up, maybe they're just kind of stuck to the pelvic wall,
Yeah.
things like that, like, does that happen?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can most specifically and accurately speak to my own experience that, and I wish not to project that on my clients or my patients, although I have seen it. I've seen it
Yeah.
quite often, but definitely my own experience of not even knowing that there were muscles there.
Yeah.
I did have the pelvic work. It felt like no man's land. I was like, even with all my background in anatomy,
Yeah.
learning that there are muscles there. But when I had
Yes.
those muscles accessed in a therapeutic way, not even
Mhm.
sexually, but therapeutically, I was really disconnected, really shut down. It's like my pelvic bowl was playing possum,
Uh,
like with
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because she learned to do that, she learned to
Yeah.
go offline. It was safer to go offline. That it's almost like muscle atrophy, where it
Mhm.
kind of furls in on itself. Like we think
Yeah.
be going into a fetal position when they're sad. I definitely, or they've been shamed. Definitely, the muscles are listening to that. The muscles are super responsive to that. And you tell your body, the same thing or certain things over and over again, it's eventually going to believe you, even though it's
Yeah.
true. Well, it will.
That's a great point. I do, occasionally some of my patients come in and do express concerns or problems with sexual health. And one of the questions I always ask is, well, how often are you having sex? Because if we're only having sex once every couple of weeks, once a month, whatever, it's sort of like trying to go to the gym once a week or once a month or once every couple of weeks. It's just, you're not going to get as good of results as if you were doing this more on a consistent basis. It's sort of like you gotta use the equipment in order to keep it in good working order. You can't just ignore it for months on end and then just expect to just jump right back in. These things, like, they atrophy. And
Yeah.
then, of course, as we get
Yes.
older in life with hormonal changes and everything else, that just exacerbates the problem. And
Yes.
it's even more important as we get into later life, and maybe that's why nature has made women have their sexual prime in their 50s, Maybe that's sort of like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, screw it. We're just gonna go for it and focus on us.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's such a good analogy. I love that. As you were sharing, I'm kind of like, it's like digestion too. If you're not chewing your food properly or even eating regularly,
yeah,
your digestion can also go offline, or it's like you need to eat regularly too. And I
right.
think sex is no different. I mean, everybody has a different sexual appetite, but really, there's so many health benefits in having and experiencing sexual pleasure or just the sexual experience. And if you don't have a partner too, I think we'll eventually get there. But talking about solo sexual practice too. I mean,
Yeah,
there's really good benefits for that as well. So it's
yeah,
not like if you're not partnered, it's okay too. To
it's
this
okay.
this conversation is still for you.
Yeah, yeah, you've gotta know what you like. You've gotta explore your body so that you know what you like so that you can then share that with somebody else or not, you can stay doing the solo thing, but Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the regulation of the nervous system and how sex really helps with that.
Yeah. Well, we are, social creatures by nature, right? In our personal neurobiology, it shows us that we co-regulate with each other.
Yeah.
If, you're in a peaceful state and I'm feeling a little anxious, but I get around you, most likely you're going to help me co-regulate.
Yeah.
I choose it. If I choose it, I choose with you. And so sex, it's like it's multiple levels because you have the physical aspect where you are feeling contact with another person. You are in close proximity where you're feeling the other person's heartbeat, maybe, you're feeling the electricity of the skin, right? Our bodies are
Yeah.
electric. So I think it's almost like it can be attunement, like on steroids, where it's not just, where we're sitting and eye gazing, we are ideally, we're experiencing pleasure alongside each other and with each other. And that is really co regulating to the nervous system, along with, sending those really good feel good hormones,
Yeah.
oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. Yeah, it can actually rewire our brains.
Yes.
Interactions with others helps us, like positive interactions with others really help
Yes.
wire. We rupture in relationship, we also repair in relationship. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful way to consciously build those neurochemical pathways that allow for pleasure, allow for ease and safety. If
Yeah.
with two really aware and attuned people, are consensual and agreeing. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, in this way, intimacy can almost serve as a sort of medicine to help regulate the nervous system, and I think partners should check in sort of before and after to make sure, are we really connected? Are we really grounded? How are we feeling?
How are
That,
we feeling?
yeah, just a good check in. Can you walk us through a 60 to 90-second practice couples can try tonight to shift out of performance and into the connection mode? And
Yeah.
then I'll give you one little idea that I think.
Okay. I was hoping. I was like, I want to hear your idea.
Well, this is something my husband and I learned. We went on a Kama Sutra retreat, and it was really awesome because it was all about, you think about Kama Sutra and sexual positions, but this was more of like just intimate, like connecting more on an intimate level. And it was all about just
Mm.
really just that deeper connection. And one of the things we would do would be to sit facing each other, so that we were really close, like our hearts were really like this far apart. And just having that
Mm.
really intense connection for a few minutes, we could look into each other's eyes, we could put our hearts together. It really makes a huge difference, especially at the beginning of an intimate session. And I felt like that was a really great thing to do.
Love that you're mentioning that, and also in the sexual context, because I've experienced that in the non-sexual context, and it can be really like that's a way to encourage attunement.
Yeah.
After this, I have a dear friend coming over and we're going to be going over some health assessment. She's getting her master's in nursing. And I already had the idea because she's like, can we go through, using the otoscope and the ophthalmoscope and just like running through it. And I'm like, okay, before we even do it, we're going to go heart to heart. We're going to eye gaze a little bit. We're going to create a unified field so
Hmm.
that we can just flow, right? So in a way, it's like you're doing the prerequisite to establish flow so you can really have that intentionality.
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, I guess so much of what we're talking about can be utilized even outside the sexual experience, right? Like there's so much
Right.
applicability. I love that.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll just kind of piggyback on that in terms of couples that want to experience that. I love that practice. I would say also just like the eye gazing and holding it for not just 30 seconds, not just 60, but 90 seconds,
Yeah.
because that's also been proven to release oxytocin is just eye
Mhm.
gazing with your partner and without agenda, and just like maybe kind of it'll naturally happen, but at times you'll feel like they're penetrating into you and you're receiving them.
Mhm.
And then at times where your eyes are like going and,
Yeah.
into the soul essentially, and they're receiving you. And so I think that really signals safety and connection. We do
Yeah.
so much better as humans, baseline, if we have safety and we have connection. We learn better, we play better,
Right.
we're more intimate,
Yes. Yeah,
How can
safety
we
and connection.
establish
You
that?
have to have that feeling of like I'm being seen, I'm being heard by my partner because I think so often that can be the root of the problem if people are not having good sex, if they're not having a good relationship. It's like, do you really feel seen by
Yeah,
your partner? And if not, why?
right.
You know, what is going on?
Yeah, I love that.
Um,
I mean, what about for people with like low desire or pain?
yeah.
What body-based steps would you recommend to begin to rebuild capacity and pleasure in
I
the
think yeah, so first of all, if you're having pain, you know, you need to look into why is that? Is there a vaginal atrophy, meaning like has the tissue in the vagina kind of shriveled because it's lacking hormones, it's lacking moisture, what's going on with that? Because oftentimes there are medical fixes that we can do for that. And there's all kinds of like laser treatments that you
Yeah.
can do. There's the O shot, there's, a variety of different things. But I think it also has to start again with that. Am I being seen and heard by my partner? Do I feel safe with my partner?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I would, look at that. I would look at the physical aspect of it too. Like, are the hormones tuned up? Is there something mechanical that needs to be addressed?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I wonder too if non-sexual physical touch, just
Mhm.
to start, like, might
Yes.
be a really good way for somebody to build safety with their partner and that desire where, again, kinda going back to what you're saying is there's no agenda, like, "Can I
Yes.
massage your shoulders?"
Yeah.
"Massage your feet." There's no agenda with this, I just want you to enjoy, or, like, just, like, lightly stroking, like, the scalp line and, doing things like that, I feel like relax the nervous system
Yeah.
and then, can facilitate pleasure associated just with touch. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to necessarily be, sexual touch.
Yeah.
And also creating safety in one's environment, like not just like between you and your partner, but okay, do we want to make sure the door's locked or make sure that there's
Yes.
the yeah, or both of our phones are off, like how
Right.
can we establish a safe container,
Yeah, the setting is
setting the
really
setting.
important. Yeah. Make
Yeah.
sure you're in a comfortable, safe room or wherever you are. It could be outside, but you have to feel safe.
Yes.
You know, that the huge amount of, what you're gonna be feeling during a session is, do I feel safe? How is the lighting, the music, the temperature? It all kind of plays into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Do we wanna light candles? Do we wanna have our pelts around? Like, what soft, cozy things,
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
we have? And I think also coziness can be an antidote to shame, actually. Like, if I'm
Uh-huh.
feeling shame, what is, like, a greater thing but a warm blanket? Or, a
Yeah.
friend is, like, feeling down. It's like, yeah, give that person something soft, and
Yeah.
same thing, if we can surround ourselves with softness, I think that can also help play into, rebuilding capacity for
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Again, teasing to the senses, like, you said.
Mm. And
Yeah.
then just to mention like some of the red flags that you might see for, if somebody is having, somebody might need extra help or professional help if they are having pain. Or, if they've had trauma in the past, that's kind of a whole separate animal, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they might need more professional help with getting over that kind of trauma.
Yeah, I think any trauma, any form of trauma, capital T trauma, little t, that is impacting one's own sexual experience or perception of safety, I definitely think to have a trusted medical practitioner that they can go to get support. Persistent pain during sex that doesn't resolve is also a big red flag.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, "Okay, I haven't had sex in a while and the muscles are, there might be a little bit of atrophy, but okay, now we're doing it regularly, that pain goes away," as opposed to pain that intensifies or even pain like
Mm.
orgasm.
Yeah.
Those are definitely red flags. You want to pay attention to that. Ongoing issues with desire or arousal
Hmm.
that, is affecting or causing somebody distress. I definitely think that's grounds to talk to a sex therapist or
Yeah.
kind of trained medical professional with that. Or even if there's like a significant mismatch in desires or
Yeah.
frequency. why not have, why not have a third party supporting both of you guys that can help get creative,
Mhm.
solutions and
Yeah.
make sure both parties are heard. Because
Yeah.
I think if, we go about it with curiosity and a safe environment that a therapist should know
Mhm.
how to create, then it opens up doors to having both parties be met and feel met,
Yeah.
seen, like you're
Yeah.
saying. So I would say those are the first red flags, prominent red flags that come to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
this
I,
has been really, really fun. Are we leaving anything out?
there is one thing that's coming to mind that
Okay.
regarding the pelvic bowl and
Yes.
open sexually down here.
Yeah.
Maybe we touched on it on our last podcast, but just it's important enough to reiterate it. I feel the more open we are in our throats, our voice, the more we're ultimately going to have safety and pleasure in our pelvic bowls, right? So,
Mm.
like, oftentimes when I'm doing pelvic work on people or facilitating, I can't really do that without kind of clearing off and cleaning off that person's needs and their ability to speak their needs.
Yeah.
Because if I'm open here and I'm not open here, and I can't speak what I want or what feels good or what doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
then it can almost kind of work in out of my favor, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, I mean, I guess I could speak for myself regarding needs. Needs have been difficult to really have because oftentimes when we have a need, in my experience in the past, have been shamed for it or misunderstood or
Mhm.
understood as difficult or so I've said it before. I think sharing our needs with somebody is even more intimate than sex because
It can't, yeah, it feels more, and you feel more vulnerable because, again, I've had similar experiences with growing up. When you have needs, that's almost like you're shamed for it or you're discounted for it. You get a lot of negative attention for having needs, for expressing needs.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So it but
And
go ahead, go ahead.
when you become a mom raising kids, you get so used to putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own. You
Yeah.
get so used to saying, I'm not going to deal with my needs right now because everyone else is more important. I've got to take care of everyone else.
Yeah.
That it becomes such an ingrained habit. Um, and it can really shut down your voice
Yes.
and the ability to express your needs because you've had so much negative consequences from them in the past.
Yes.
But it can have those unintended consequences of shutting down everything else.
Yes, exactly. Unintended consequences of shutting down everything else, including intimacy, including
Yeah.
relationships. So then we learn, okay, at the sake of not speaking my needs, I might still get to have the relationship. I might still get to have the approval from my parents or from my
Yeah.
teachers or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is just coming through as we're sharing, there's so much that can be said through the voice without even using words.
Mhm.
So we know certain sounds of pleasure, right?
Uh-huh.
Like let those come through. Like that's very affirming. We can also use our voice, go, you can, if you have enough comfort with your partner, like you don't even necessarily have to find the words. Like let them be sounds. Let that come through. And you can even like play with your partner, be like, hey, sometimes words are difficult for me to say. Instead of saying like, I don't like that or that doesn't feel good, which I totally encourage people to say
Yeah. Yeah.
can have conversations about that. How do you want to hear that? Like
Yeah.
your needs around communication. Oh, do you want me to be straight up direct? But sometimes I think I'm talking about like three different things right now. So let me hone in. Many couples struggle to say this doesn't feel good or I
Mhm.
don't like that, right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
without the anticipation of shame or defensiveness, I definitely want to encourage people to be able to say those things to each other and still be held in intimacy and really use those as doors to go deeper. Okay, well, then tell
Yeah.
me what you do like.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you want more of? Or even after the fact, during that session, as you call it, like, what
Yeah.
would you like more of? And what would you
Mhm.
prefer less of?
Mhm.
Or, maybe redirection instead of rejection. I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. When I voice my needs, that puts me at the risk of rejection. And that also puts the other person at the risk of them feeling rejected, that they're not doing a good enough job.
Right. Right. All of a sudden, you don't wanna offend or put them off
Right.
saying that you didn't do a good job. It's not about you doing a good job, it's just how I feel.
just how I feel. Yeah. And sometimes that can trigger a whole shame response. And then they go into a shame spiral and you're like, wait, I'm still stuck not having my need, So how to prevent the shame hijack response? Because I
Yeah.
do it too. Somebody tells me, oh, I don't like that. You just instantly go, you know,
I wasn't doing a good enough job.
not
What?
like that. Okay. Well, what do you mean by that? Tell me more, And so
Yeah.
we can do that in the bedroom. Oh my gosh, how wonderful would that be to do that in life?
Yes.
I like how you
Yes.
do it this way. This makes me feel uncomfortable. Or I really, really like when you do this,
Uh-huh.
this I just can't relax into.
Yeah.
Using words like that, I think are really helpful and just opening up those non-judgmental conversations. Like if you knew that I wasn't going to feel any shame about, how you experience that, what feedback would you give me?
Yeah.
Looking and then through that, looking for creative ways to connect and also remembering you're both on the same team. You're on team pleasure. You want that pleasure for both
Yeah.
y'all.
Yeah.
So, and then this also brings up, I think I might have mentioned it before, but conflict, kind of being on the other side of intimacy. Can't really
Hmm.
talk about intimacy without bringing up conflict because the deeper you go inside of somebody, the innermost layers
Hmm.
in intimacy, it is going to bring up, and I say conflict, not of like throwing plates and you're upset at each other and you're yelling, but just like a conflict of, I don't like that. Oh, I really, or that kind of place in you where you might have not been able to voice that and you're internally conflicted. So how can we hold the conflict or how can we hold the, whether it's a power differential or whether it's, you know, being conflicted about somebody's needs or your own needs, how can we hold that? And how can we still hold each other and high
Yeah.
five at the end,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've been doing jujitsu a lot. And one of the things I love about jujitsu is it's conflict. I mean,
Mm.
it is conflict at its finest. We are conflicting over who's going to tap each other first.
Uh-huh.
And then when you tap, it's saying, hey, I'm done. And it's a light tap. And it's just, that's too much. That immediately the person goes, okay, okay, continue to keep rolling. You don't even skip a beat. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, you tapped. How could you have tapped?
Yeah. Yeah.
I took you there. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Took you to your
Yeah.
edge. So anyway, I guess just being comfortable with conflict.
Yes.
How do you navigate conflict? That also helps us be more robust in expressing our needs
Yeah.
and being okay with them.
Yeah.
In the past, we were taught that might have meant conflict. Maybe it
Right.
doesn't have to
Right.
mean that anymore.
The Kama Sutra training, they called it a love stop. Okay, like if something is happening and all of a sudden you're getting maybe defensive, if you're getting upset
Ah,
about something, it's just like, okay, let's just do a little love stop. This is what I'm experiencing from what you said or what you did, and this is why it's making me uncomfortable.
I love that languaging.
I think a lot of this is so much we just, especially if you grow up with not talking about sex at all, you just don't have the language to talk about your needs or what you like, what you don't like. Like
Yeah.
it's just, you know, you just don't. It's like what? There's,
So, like, I
yeah,
can say what I like, what I like. Yeah, I really encourage a lot of times my clients just to walk around the house, even when they're by themselves, and just say, I have needs too. I have needs too. I have to say that to myself because it's a loving way to like recover
yeah,
that we have needs and it's okay. And
yeah,
even like, I love listing the needs too. Like, and I'm not talking necessarily survival basic needs, I'm talking emotional needs. Yeah, I
yes,
need to feel important. I even
yeah,
need to feel cherished. I
yeah,
even need to feel listened to. None of those are wrong, right?
yeah,
But sometimes we harbor our own shame around having those needs.
yes,
And so if we can, I'm like oftentimes with my clients, I'm like, needs are my love language. If they tell me that they're cold and they need a blanket, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for trusting me with that information. Because I know how hard it is to say, hey, or I need more pressure or I need less pressure. Oh my God, thank you. Can we just take
yeah,
a minute to celebrate that you've expressed your need? Like, it's riveting for me because I know it takes trust. It takes
yes,
trust for you to tell me what you need.
yeah,
I honor it.
yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
It's really great. Well, I guess one last note on orgasm, pleasure, and reframing goals.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So if orgasm has become sort of a scoreboard, how do
Uh-huh.
we redefine a successful sexual encounter so both people relax and feel met?
Okay, we're saving the best for last. I love this because much of it is about the orgasm, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't achieve orgasm or, the scoreboard analogy is so great. And well, okay, what is orgasm? Orgasm in itself is a release.
Yes.
It's a climax, but it's a release. It's a letting go. Even the
Mhm.
French word that they
Mhm.
use for
Oh, yes.
orgasm, right? La
Petite
petite
mort.
mort. Yeah.
You know,
Tiny death.
little death.
Yeah,
Yes.
little death, and then rebirth. It's like a complete emptying of
Yeah.
oneself, right? So, like, I think just like framing why we go after it or why we want to achieve that is ultimately so much of our lives are like the opposite of release. It's like
Mhm.
tighten, hold back. So, okay, let's honor that. Maybe that's why we go for it on some level and why
Mhm.
we fixate around it. But I also like wonder if we could incorporate like orgasm side quests, if you will, side quest of release. How can I experience release with my partner in other ways just to take the pressure off? Or
Yeah.
because it kind of primes the pump. So I can release through my voice.
Mhm.
I can release, we release through our sweat. If you're into
Mhm.
that, we can release through muscle release as, I might be grabbing or squeezing my partner or they're squeezing me. I can feel the blood flow like releasing from my muscles through that pressure or that impact. During sex, we can release through laughter.
Yeah.
We can release through tears. I think all of that nuance is totally missed, but that's like the fertile ground
Mm.
for possible orgasm.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to take orgasm completely off the table because it's so great.
Right.
And everybody deserves the orgasm. But if we had these side quests, I think the pressure would be kind of taken off. Or if we
Yeah.
really enhanced different
Yeah.
forms of release with our partner and with ourselves, it feeds into all of that because I do think that, in terms of cultivating authenticity, it's almost like the orgasm is just one note, of release and
Right.
one strong note. But what if we were able to play chords at the same time where we're experiencing release on different levels? And then also that begs the question of like, what does that look like outside of the bedroom with my partner? Can I make
Mhm.
my partner release in different ways, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because ultimately, I do think that is relieving to our nervous systems, our body, our chemistry, and
Yeah.
it builds a lot of connection,
Mhm.
trust, and satisfaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think how I define a sexual encounter, and I would love to know what your definition of a sexual successful encounter would be, is yeah, I love to use the words where we both feel met, but what
Yeah.
does that mean? I love to feel met at my edges of intimacy. So at the depth, like how deep can I go within myself and how deep
Mhm.
can I take that other person to themselves?
Mhm.
Like it's almost like that infinity, right? Where you're both experiencing each other
Yes.
at a deeper level. Whether it's
Yeah.
like a new Kama Sutra position where it is edgy and it's
Uh-huh.
vulnerable and you're like, okay, we're doing this together. Wow, I didn't know. I didn't know I could experience pleasure in this way.
Yeah.
Or it's, yeah, like being brought to a feeling that maybe I haven't experienced in my body before. And it doesn't have to be a climax. It could just be,
Yeah.
profound pleasure.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I guess where we both feel met and fulfilled in a way that not
Mhm.
fulfilled by each other, but the
Mhm.
experience of ourselves is what's
Mhm.
fulfilling alongside
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always feel like it's sort of, an exchange of energy.
Huh.
It's like when we hit this
Mm.
point and we're exchanging our energy and it revs up our and it just sort of like recharges our batteries, We can go through the week and just be like kind of like, ugh, life is kind of just getting us down, and then we
Huh.
have this incredible intimate session, and I feel like the batteries have just been recharged.
Love that. A
Yeah.
life-giving experience.
Yeah.
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 And
With
it
the
and
complete
it's not always about the orgasm, I mean, that's usually happens, but it's not
not
it's more
centered
about
around one moment.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's definitely more about that really intimate connection on that emotional feeling kind of level.
Yeah, I love that, where it's almost like a circuit where you're recharging each
Yeah.
other's batteries, like
Yes.
yeah, that makes sense even on a nervous system level, that the 2 halves of the nervous system are interfacing in a way that's very attuning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Maria, thank you so much for joining us on the Functional Edge. I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been. If any of you found value in what you heard, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share the podcast with somebody who needs it, and leave a review. It's the best way to support our mission of bringing powerful health solutions to more people. I'll put some references in the show notes for everyone, including Dr. Maria's information. And until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and keep living on the functional edge.
Thank you for joining me on The Functional Edge. I hope today's episode gave you fresh insights and practical tools to level up your life. If you found value in what you heard, don't forget to hit subscribe, share the podcast with someone who needs it, and leave a review. It's the best way to support our mission of bringing powerful health solutions to more people. For more resources, updates, and behind-the-scenes content, visit drjuliaward.com. Until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and keep living on the functional edge.